So thought I was going to do a simple video on your options for CCUs while you still can get them, and then start talking about the semifinalists and the packages as they start shaping up, which there is a huge change I need to talk about at the end of this video about that. If you've already been seeing the Carrack versus MPOV, you can already see it for yourself about how that's quite a roller coaster of emotions there for the entire community. But I wanted to start with this big sale they sprung on us for Talk Like a Pirate Day as a weekend sale. If you're looking at this as a time to pick up ships, I am cautioning you and reminding you that these are all going to be available at the annual ship sale with a 10-year insurance. So I'm going to be talking more about these and assuming that you're picking them up as a CCU, as an upgrade from, say, your Drake Dragonfly Black. You can see the value right there that you would get, and then it would transfer. So let's say you go from the Dragonfly to the Herald, not counting taxes if you have any where you're at, it would be 45 USD. So that would literally be a nice little upgrade. And that's an example of how you could get an LTI Herald on that ship if you haven't already upgraded your Dragonfly to something else. Just a thought. Now, with these ships, like I said, I'm going to stick with the highlights, but you know what? Maybe I should go through each ship. That'd be the fair way to do this. I'm starting to learn that there is different people with different experiences in the game and also different skill levels in the game of how much time they've actually spent in the game to get some perspective. And I'm going to try to do something now, near future, long term with these type of sales, as I've done in the past, but I've kind of been intermittent with. So let's talk about now. The Dragonfly Black is a neat little fun ride around that has a value to it, and it will have a variety of enhanced insurance. If you see, though, it only comes with a 6-month insurance on this one. So, well, there's your answer. It doesn't have an enhanced insurance. And most of these, I think, are like that. Let's double check. Just go to the cat. Because it's in the best, because it was in the running for the Ship Showdown, it has 24-month insurance. But the Corsair would be 6-month. So what you're hearing from me, so the Black as well would also have the 24 months then, if that's the case. Yep, there it is that the Cutlass Black and the Caterpillar, if you're looking for either one of them, they will not be getting a Best in Show skin this year, paint, but they would get 2 years insurance. So they are the only addendum to this collection that if you're really considering picking up a new ship and you're not completely concerned about insurance, it is only a small expense, it is only a small perk, it only is needed after the alpha, after the beta is complete into the actual game. It only starts the clock then, and then you have 2 years of insurance. They may be an option. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is an option if you don't want to wait for the annual ship sale. So the Cutlass Black is not in a bad position. It's in a much better position than the Dragonfly Black, which has no quantum drive. It's not really a ship. It's more of a motorcycle. And let's get back to getting an order here. The Herald. The Herald is supposed to be a data runner for future design. I think in the near future, this ship is going to gain some more value because right now it's not really in a great spot. It does have beds. It's designed for up to 2 crew. It can't really do much damage. It's a little quick for what it is, and it is a data runner. It's like a hustler. Think of it as something that can carry a box or two, and down the line it does have the ability to do light data work. However, since the development of the Mercury Star Runner, which can run data and has a serious cargo hold and has reasonable shields and has turrets and has pilot weapons, it's kind of overshadowed. I would argue, though, that in a specialized environment, this wouldn't be the worst ship to have. And in the early days of an outpost, depending on how data is needed, we still have to find out how that interplay is done. This might be a handy ship to have rocking around, where it really doesn't matter if it's the perfect ship. It's more about the fuel efficiency, the ease to fix it, and Drake is known for being for your utilitarian set of ships. This could be an interesting crash pad for certain environments, and you can bring this along in some ships that any of these other ships would not be able to fit in, the Buccaneer being an exception. Like, that's another smaller ship for what it is. We'll get into that in a moment. But out of these three in this row, the Cutlass Black is the best multi-role. It does not have the data running capacity. The Herald is a nice specialist, and it has a reasonable price for what it is. If it goes any higher, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're CCUing from the Dragonfly Black, it's not a bad ship at all. It's not a bad ship. I don't know why it's on a pirate weekend, by the way. It doesn't really deserve that. It's a very respectable ship. It's a working profession ship. And I guess it's good to have people have options. But, yeah, I don't understand. Onto the Cutlass Black itself, it's got a turret. It's a true two-seater multi-crew vessel. It has reasonable cargo capacity. It has jump seats in the back. It's got 2 beds. For whatever reason, it doesn't have a proper bathroom. But it is pretty reasonable for its distance. It also has weapon lockers, and it will have access control to the cockpit area and the bed area where the crew is. You can see the keypads right on the doors as you enter and exit that area, to the cargo area / jump seat area, where there is also side doors, which I like, and that has docking capabilities. So this is like the first of these ships out of this group that I would argue is actually a nice multi-role for the current and the near future. Down the line, I think there's going to be better options that overshadow it, but this, you could earn many other ships with this ship, and you can squeeze in some of these space bikes and other kinds of crazy things inside of this thing. Not comfortably, but you can do it. It's not perfectly suited for it. So, onto the Buccaneer. The Buccaneer is one of those first ships that they used to argue punched above its weight. It is in-game. It is kind of a death trap. But dang, it has a lot of forward-facing weaponry, and it has a lot of capabilities for its single pilot to take on anything at once. It is a really cool-looking ship. It has also been the fighter that is basically pitched with the Kraken. So, like, the idea is that, like, different types of cutlasses, like 2 of cutlasses, and up to, say, 4 of these Buccaneers, and maybe 2 more in the hangars below, because they said this can fit in the hangars on the Kraken and the Kraken Privateer, and there's 2 hangars. It is basically tailor-made for that type of role. So if you picture 6 of those Buckies and 2 cutlasses coming off of a Kraken alongside the Kraken's own armament, provided it picked its fights correctly and it's not trying to pick on something that has huge torpedoes or something else that can really rip into its not-so-armored hull, anything it's fighting is going to have a bad time. I picture the Buccaneer as a great symbiotic fighter, not just on the Kraken, but anywhere where it could be dropped off into the fight or engage in a defensive fight to protect the larger ship and really sucker punch anything coming after it. I will say, though, that this thing, if it gets dogfighted and if it takes a hit in the wrong place, it's going to have a bad time. That being said, it's got 2 engines and they're spread out. So just because it loses an engine does not mean it's completely gone. Its wing-mounted weaponry is spread out as well. It has fuselage weaponry. It's not as much of a death trap as I say it is, but at the same time, it doesn't have redundant systems like a Vanguard would have or some other crazily, ridiculously overbuilt, much larger ship. And it can fit in places that some other fighters cannot. That's kind of the pitch for the Bucky. You can use it now and enjoy it. It's not a bad dogfighter. You can use it in the near. In the long term, you'd probably be upgrading it to something else, but it is there. And in theory, and if you ever get a much larger ship, or if your buddies or an org have such a ship, you will be welcome on board. It won't be a real difficulty bringing that ship online. So if you're on a budget, that's not a bad ship. That being said, for that type of price point, you've got 2 other options I'm going to go into right now, is the cutlasses. It's kind of that's the problem with this price point. The Cutlass Red used to be a buy already type of thing, but it is now basically a APC without the regeneration capacity. It is going to be downgraded to tier 3 bed without the set ICU preference, without the ability for, if someone dies outside, they cannot regenerate or aka respawn inside the Cutlass. Currently, people in 3.4, even in 3, as I'm speaking in 3.14.1, can respawn full health, full gear, sitting inside that Cutlass Red. The Cutlass has 2 beds. So it's now being pitched as an ambulance, which was intentional. That was never changed or anything. It was always meant to lose that capacity. But the idea was that the Apollos were supposed to come online to replace this, the Apollo Medevac and the Apollo Triage. They're not here yet, unless we get a surprise at October 9, Digital Citizen Con. The Cutlass is basically losing its capacity, and only like the Studio Capitals, like the Carrack and the 890 Jump, will be left with those tier 2 beds to have basic regeneration capacities that the Cutlass will be losing. So this is kind of putting us into an awkward position. Do I recommend the Cuddy Red or not? I would say no. It loses almost all its cargo bay except for that tiny back bay, like between the door, between the interior airlock door and the ramp. And that's all it gets. It's like a tiny little space between the engines. So it just occurred to me on a mouse. I can point to this. So like right here, and then it stops. It also has something else interesting. It loses the turret for a spotlight. Now, if you're a content creator, we've actually used it on the Machinima series Divisions, which I highly recommend on Ash's channel. I'll put it in the cards at the end of this if you haven't already checked it out. But we've used it on there as a spotlight to shine a light onto our space when the sun is not in the correct space and we needed more light. We used it for that. It is a hyper niche use, but it does have that. The idea is that it's supposed to be able to search for when the beacons fade or they're not exactly on the position. You can search for, say, a downed player and use the spotlight to point at them and find them. But unfortunately, it lacks what the Apollo has. The Apollo will have 2 stretchers. Basically, they can float in space and go pick up the downed player and bring them inside the nice, armored, comfy Apollo, and then regenerate the player. And that would be like a down state that you would replace, that you regenerate them from, so they wouldn't even lose their gear. So they are infinitely more practical and valuable than the Cutlass, but the Cutlass is half their price. So it kind of puts them in a weird spot. But once again, I wouldn't recommend the Cuddy Red because it's going to be nerfed unless you right now want to play for probably the next month or two and enjoy the Cuddy Red until the patch 3.15 goes live, and then it gets basically nerfed instantly. Unless that plan is changed, I would not recommend this ship currently. And it's a shame because I own that ship. It's one of my favorite. It is my favorite Cutlass. It's one of my favorite ships in the game. I think the skins for it are fantastic. The paints, especially the ghoulish green one, I think they're great. And it's coming right in October, where I was going to recommend everybody pick up that skin and paint, which I still would, but it's like $5. But but I wouldn't recommend this ship at this moment if you don't already have a Cutlass. Okay, so that's kind of that price point. It loses some of its multi-role, but it gains that medical capacity. It is an interesting ship, but unless the concepts change, this is going to be nerfed pretty considerably for what it is. It goes from an armored APC to an ambulance, an armored ambulance that basically keeps you from fading out of existence completely until you get to proper medical. So useful, but not great as a main ship, especially. Okay, so the Vulture. This is what's called an advanced starter ship. This is going to be the smallest ship that can do, that's designed from the ground up to do salvage. It is still a concept ship even. It's not a ship in game, although it will be in game soon. So when this ship in the near future, right now it's not in game, so I can't comment on that, but in the near future, I believe this ship will have its moment in the sun. I believe it will be one of the only ships that can do proper salvage when you're not using a hand tool. However, I think that this ship is very limited. Its SCU space for the size is not big enough to really take advantage of this ship. You will likely need a second ship that will be collecting the goods and moving them, or you'll be limited, like, oh, I want to stay near my station that I'm living out of to be able to keep taking this thing back and transferring inventory over to the station. I do see this ship as an exciting role, though. I would like to see if you can take hand loot and then salvage it with the Vulture. So having one of these tag along or even squeeze it, maybe, it's pretty big, but I'm going to try anyway, trying to squeeze it into a C2 Hercules. And then, you know, the idea is that this would be like the first of the portable systems. I wanted to talk about this in a whole video about the Argo the rumored Argo ship, I won't go too far into because that's kind of getting into some gray area there. But there is going to be a portable small refinery ship. That was confirmed at the last in-person CitizenCon. But we're still waiting to see it. That could be a surprise ship for this year's Digital CitizenCon, and it would be the opposite of the Vulture. Now, multiple times, CIG has gone on the record saying that the salvage mechanic is the opposite of the mining refining mechanics. That the salvage and then the processing would be basically like parallel structures where a ship could be specialized in one or the other, and it's basically the opposite of each other. One breaks down, one builds up, to build into materials, or breaks down materials to then use again to be buildable materials. And as I understand it, that's basically the gist. So my idea was originally to try to, whenever that small refinery ship finally gets into game, try to squeeze that into a C2 Hercules, or preferably an M2 for proper armor space and protection, and basically have the door open and operate that with a couple ROCs and have like a portable mining outpost that you could operate with a small org. I see the Vulture as another interesting concept of that. And even if you can't go as complex as fitting it into a C2 or an M2 or whatever the near future ships are available to us, I could definitely see this on its own doing some interesting things. So I'm very curious to see if it can, while it's busy doing its own salvage, can it take in hand salvage or a future vehicle? I would like to see as well salvage. So it opens up a lot of exciting topics. But just like itself, they don't exist in game, and we don't know everything yet. I hope to see more videos in the future, and especially at Digital CitizenCon, more discussion and fleshing out of what exactly salvage is going to look like, how big in the inventory space it's going to take up, how is it possible to compress salvage, like can you process it in the field, will you need a refinery, will it be its own system? There's a lot to be said, and a lot that hasn't been said. And before you pipe up in the comments, I know there's a few things I'm not mentioning about the Vulture. It's because I'm not quite sure if it's all going to fit on that ship. So I'm just going to leave it where it's at, and I hope to see more concrete videos or at least discussions on the spectrum, etc., that are more than just when the concept sale went live from years back. That's just my perspective on it. Take it what you will. So I would not recommend it at this price point. However, if you happen to have a Cuddy Red that's already $5 difference, that may be not a bad CCU. And just hang on to it. You don't have to apply it right now. Use the Cuddy Red and enjoy it until 3.15, and then if the Vulture launches in 3.15 or 3.15.1 or whatever, and it's looking good, you can always throw that CCU on the chain, and then bam, you've got a nice ship. You've got something that is the new meta for an entire play loop when you just lost a gameplay loop piece in this one. So, interesting ship for those already in the middle of a chain. In the middle of a CCU chain, the Vulture would be an interesting ship. Starting out, like if you're coming from something like this or another kind of starter ship, for the price point, I just don't see the value. I'm not saying it's going to lose value. I mean, it is a stepping stone to something near better and greater, though, for the people just starting out. Bear that in mind. I think you will be disappointed if you're trying to use this as your primary ship, no matter how industrial focused you are. But that's just, I hope to be wrong. I hope I am. Just like today was a surprise. I thought the Carrack was going to win by a lot. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So, the Cutlass Blue. The Cutlass Blue, once again, falls into that category of too expensive for its price point, but it is a nice ship. I mean, you can get a Connie Taurus for not much more than that. And the Connie Taurus is an infinitely more useful ship. So I think the Cutlass Blue is a cool ship. It has a better look. It's actually something you might not be able to see here or not, but on the front of a normal Cutlass, it has like this squared off windshield like a helicopter would have, or some other crazy thing would have, like an old school thing. Whereas the Cuddy Blue, I've always liked its cockpit is this one piece curved glass, like the whatever aluminum strength armor, whatever you can see through, and it's curved. And I've always thought that was a really cool design. It used to have an upgraded shield as well, if I remember correctly, and it also had a quantum jamming capacity on board. It was very short range. It's not very useful, but it was something. And I think it even had upgraded weapons. But it's a really cool ship. Its main claim to fame is in where those two beds are in the red. It has storage for at least six, if I'm not mistaken, at least six cryopods. It might be eight even, might even be 6 and 6. I haven't been in one in a while, but it has an incredible amount of cryopods in the back of it. They stand upright, and it's like Han Solo style. They put people into the bounties you've collected. So let's say you're going around and you're finding, I'm guessing NPCs or players. Once they're put into that state, they would be immediately, they'd respawn at Kletcher while you still have the old character, to turn in. But the idea is that you could bring them alive, to kept alive inside these stasis pods, safe where they can't hurt anybody, and you could turn them into the UE advocacy or whatever company was hiring you. And this is like a bounty hunter ship. It's a really cool concept. I think the price jump is because they realized that this that's a lot of value in the back of that ship. I think those bounties, being able to turn them in alive without the risk of them trying to take over the ship or something like that with a hacking tool and then breaking into the front or something they snuck on board, is great peace of mind. And if you look at the Hawk, where it only had a single seat that you can put somebody into as your bounty, this is like dozen Hawks. This thing is way more powerful too, and weaponry wise. And it's a two-seater, so you can enjoy the ship with a friend without them having to go out and get their own Hawk and have two ships and handle all the fuel load and everything else you have to think about with multiple ships involved and coordination. I could see this as two friends or family or something hanging out, going running bounties together, and this would be a fun way to combine. If one of you is into first-person shooter type stuff, FPS stuff, and one of you is not into those things, you're into space flights and adventuring and stuff through the space, you both have something in common here, because one of you could be the pilot and handling all the coordination of the contracts and handling Overwatch and protecting the deal and checking the scan to make sure there's no incoming threats that are going to get on top of you. The other one's the sneaky one running off to go get the person and bring them back, get the bounty. And I could even see like a division of things. So it is an exciting ship. It's one of those, once again, if you're in the pipeline already and you're looking at a nerf ship, or you're looking at a fighter and you're saying, I'm not getting enough out of this fighter for its price point, I could see upgrading to something like this, but it would be an extreme. You really got to do some soul searching and think about, are you really enjoying both the space flight, bounty hunting, and then also the EVAing and the ground combat and everything goes along with bounty hunting. And remember, if you're taking them alive, you're going to need a melee or a stun tool and all these other crazy things that are not perfectly perfected yet. And the gameplay may not be something you're interested in. You may like FPS, but you may not enjoy having to stun somebody trying to shoot your character, and they're not out to stun. So just remember that this is an interesting gameplay mechanic and very cool ship, and it does fulfill a role. I see this as a lot better for near term and future gameplay than the Cuddy Red, or even, dare I say, at the Cuddy Black. If thank goodness the price point's low enough on the Cuddy Black that I can't really pick on the Cuddy Black too much. And then, speaking of the next, let's bump up a little bit more. We have the Cat and the Corsair. I'm going to top show the Cat first, because I have a lot of experience with the Cat as a hauler, and as, of all things, I even went and fought multiple Xenothreat incursions with a Caterpillar. Its forward-facing weaponry is decent. It's very, very good. It has multi-crew capacity, and as long as you don't let somebody get to your sides or your back, or if you do, you better have those turrets mounted. But or if you're coordinating with the rest of a fleet, this is a very underrated ship. It has good shields. It's not a bad ship at all, and there's 4 modular bays at the front of a Caterpillar that open to the sides. Those areas right now are just cargo, but in the future, they're going to field multiple other modules to them. And there's all sorts of ideas for that, whether it be, all sorts of crazy drug production to having the ability to fly dragonflies and service them out the front of the ship to be able to have like this fast assault team or as a logistics vessel for a both, not just a pirate organization, but for a research or an adventure, a journey organization traveling around exploring. I could see a lot of exciting things for the Caterpillar in the future. And if you want some ideas, take a look at what they've done with the Retaliator. No, it doesn't have the bomb bay doors of Retaliator. You're not going to get size 9 torps, but they have cargo bays. They have VIP spaces where it's like a quarters for people that are using for hopper flights. We're inferring is basically what we're thinking now. I could see things like that easily being upfit into the Caterpillar, and maybe even I would love to see, say, a Cuddy Red like takes to those 2 Drake beds, the tier 3 beds, and put them into one of those modules. Once again, that is none of that's confirmed, but that is something where I could see things like that being done with Drake, because the Caterpillar can be basically the center of a pirate or a out in the boonies fleet. Like, not doesn't always mean they're pirates just because they work outside the realm of the UEE or outside the realm of central authority. I could see Empyro being able to use a Caterpillar as a common way stop for multiple smaller ships. Basically, a Caterpillar and a Starfarer or a Starfarer G, Gemini, being able to be utilized. The Starfarer, the Caterpillar holds all the cargo, additional ammunition, is able to maybe even have some extra utility tools on board, so you guys can all be EVAing and fixing up your ship as best you can, outfitting it with weapons, ammunition, and then the Starfarer topping up its fuel tanks, and off it goes onto another adventure. I could see the Caterpillar. It can land not too bad at all for surprisingly nimble for such a large ship. And that's the one downside, is that it's a reasonably sized ship. It's a long ship. It is not the best ship if you're trying to think about operating in tiny places or operating out of an outpost that's extremely small landing pads. Like, you're not going to do box runs in a Caterpillar is what I'm trying to get at. Whereas in a Cutlass, it's not out of the realm of possibility to do box runs until you have enough UEC to pick up a proper cargo load. The Caterpillar's like, if you have the bankroll already, like maybe, even just 50, 100K UEC, you can fill this thing up with cargo and go make some serious money. Or you can go use this in combat, and it's going to need to be a bit more fuel and ammunition cost than a smaller ship, but it's going to make you money over time, especially if an orc's supporting it. It's an interesting ship. I'm not saying it's a capital or any crazy off-the-wall thing, but it is a consideration for this type of ship. It's getting to that size where you really need to start thinking about it less of a solo vessel, and preferably at least more of a small gang vessel, a small group vessel, something where you're coordinating. And that price point is a little high, but it is a dang good ship, and it will make you the money to buy all of these ships in game after the wipe. There is no question about that. It used to be the best hauler in the game until the C2 Herc turned up. And even then, it's still hotly debated and contested because it has that modularity in the wings, where the C2 will not. That being said, I just got done explaining how the C2 is great at handling vehicles, and it can do some crazy things it was never meant to do, and concepts, and squeeze small ships in there. So both ships have their value, incredible value, and the Caterpillar is one of those type of ships. Finally, the Corsair. The Corsair is basically Drake's answer to the Expedition variants. It is not a Carrack. Do not compare it to a Carrack, and you'll be happy. The Corsair is something where I wish the picture would have loaded. I'm literally using their loader. But the Corsair is basically a 3-crew ship. Corsair is not some giant ship. The Corsair is not some giant ship, but what it does bring to the table for, say, a 3, maybe you could squeeze a 4th person in crew, is that it brings the Drake look, feel, and concepts to the explorer mentality. It is a good. I think it will be a solid explorer trying to find jump points, trying to find lucrative trade deals for the rest of a small group, or much larger group. I think that Corsair is an underrated ship. It has very interesting forward-facing armament, more so than many of the other Explorer designs, until you get up to the 600i Explorer, which is a much larger ship and costlier ship. So if you're looking for a category for the Corsair, it kind of makes well, it kind of wedges in itself firmly between medium and large. It kind of has some of the mentalities of a smaller large class vessel, and it kind of outgrows the medium class but kind of tries to stay real close to it. It does have a captain's quarters and two other quarters on board. It is a very interesting ship. It is something where I could comfortably see three players operating out of, or two players and an NPC operating out of. And it is one of those ships where it is costly, but you get a lot of, if you're looking for this kind of ship, you're going to get a lot of happiness out of this ship. The Corsair is a good price point for what it is. And if you have the budget, if you have something near it, or even not near it, it's like it's a reasonable upgrade. I think it's one of the few still worth it. You might not like the design where it's not completely symmetrical. I know for a fact that Execute over in the Info Runners team loves non-symmetrical ships, so he probably owns like 20 of these damn things. But when you talk about the symmetricalness or whatever that may be, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with this ship. I think this ship deserves a lot more of a nod than it gets. And I don't care what the stat card says. I think this is a solid three-person ship. If you throw a fourth person in there, they're going to be bored until it's time to fight with the turrets. I think that it's going to be one of those ships where three people comfortably, maybe an NPC, maybe even just two players trying to squeeze only one or two NPCs into it, be fine. As we've talked about before, if you haven't heard one of my very early videos, NPCs will operate on like a schedule on a clock where half the time they're going to be asleep or recreating, sitting there watching a TV or eating or whatever and going to sleep, and half the time they'll be working. So if you have, say, only three bunks or something like that, and one of those bunks is designated for the NPCs, unless there's a artificial limit that CIG puts on it, you will be able to have a hot bunk concept where one NPC's working, the other one's asleep or recreating or whatever, and then they switch. The other one's off duty, the other one goes on duty. And if obviously there's a big fight, they're not just going to lay in their bed. They're going to come help. They're going to jump on a turret. They're going to jump on the engineering, whatever you need them to do. Hopefully at least basic orders will be able to be followed. And even though they're not designated to be in a position, they will be able to go man that position and handle it. So the guys and gals of the NPC Corps, regardless of what affiliation they are, will hopefully be able to all follow those rules to a certain extent. Maybe they have to wake up, they have to grab their boots or something in their spacesuit in case the thing gets, the explosive decompression during a fight, and then they get to work. So there may be some down leg, but you can get them back to running, hopefully. So I just wanted to mention that I'm spending less and less time looking at the paper stats and more time of thinking how the ship would work, how I would handle it as a captain of a ship, how I would handle it as an org, trying to organize multiple people and give them advice on different ships, and how maybe, I would have to step back a little bit and think about how each person wants to handle their ship differently, because there's different use cases. I'm not saying people that are industrials are constantly industrials, but they like more organization. And in general, people that are going to be thinking about salvage or mining are going to be in the same category, unless their heart's in it just to make the money so they can go play with their combat ships. I get that. Everyone's playstyle is different. And I hope I approach this as wide as possible. And the reason I keep saying that is because I hope that I didn't just cover piracy and combat in this pirate weekend, because there's a lot of gems in here for people looking to upgrade. Every one of these ships is available on CCU. So let's take a look at that now, and let's just confirm with the upgrades that they are available. And furthermore, that the upgrades that are available are not war bond. That's the only downside to the way I did this. Yes, you heard it here. I did not check if they were war bonded or not. So I'm going back through now and confirming that they are available. You can see the USD prices here before taxes or anything if you have any taxes. and you can see the that's only for because I'm a subscriber, and you can see that there is no war bond option for any of these. So real money versus not real versus credit, you will have no benefits or drawbacks to say even grabbing one of these as an upgrade and sitting on it with store credit, pardon me, or putting something into buyback to be able to afford these. So remember that as well. You do not have to have all these ships just sitting in your hangar unless you want to when you have the budget to do so. You could, in theory, hit the Corsair and go, for example, from a Connie Taurus and have that one little upgrade sitting there in your hangar. And if even that's too much of a budget for you, like say you just don't have it in your gaming budget for this month, you could always pick this up now and you could have it just sit there in your buyback. Remember, if the price on the Corsair goes up, though, and it's not a war bond price, war bond purchase, you will suffer from the price increase when you go to buy this back again. So if you decide, hey, the Corsair's finally out, it's no longer just a concept that I don't care the loaners for, I'd rather have my Taurus, I'm going to go buy that back, and the price goes up $10, you will have to buy that for, instead of this, you'll have to buy it for $10 more. But still, it'll be there for you as an option. So these type of sales are great times to scoop up these type of in-between options and stepping stones. And in concept ships as well, just like, for example, the Corsair. And that's kind of where I think that I covered everything pretty well. If you have any questions, of course, you can always post them below, or you can hit me up on Discord, RedJ, #0001, as always. And on to the surprise of the day. So I've been tracking this through the day. It started out as just a couple hundred votes over. It is now nearly 1,000 votes ahead, 800 votes ahead on the Argo over the Carrack. Old hype versus new hype. Xylo saying he's going to have to paint his face orange in honor of the Argo color. And for the MPUV, if it wins, that's how confident he was that the Carrack would win. I think that these numbers will get closer again as we see the U.S. time zones getting home from work, getting home from school, being able to get on and voting. I think that there was an early hype train for the MPUV cargo that may carry it to victory. I did not think it was going to be this way. I thought it was going to be the Carrack by the skin of its teeth, but clearly it is not so far. As a reminder, there's 17 hours left. Vote with your conscience, vote with your heart. Don't vote because the hype train either way. Whether you don't feel pressure to vote for the Carrack or the MPUV, just vote for who you feel is right. I'm going to withdraw any type of comments on this. I'll highlight my votes, as always. And you can see that I voted for the Carrack, as you saw up here. I guess I could talk about why I voted for the Carrack. I felt that the Carrack is a better option for the long term, and I feel like it makes a statement, and I would have liked to have seen it up against the C2 Hercules. So if it does not win, it's going to be the MPUV versus the C2 Herc, so it'll be very new hype versus social made hype. It'll be a very interesting contest, but I was hoping the Carrack would have made it, and I think that the Carrack really could have used the colorations for this year, especially as an explorer design. And I've heard from two people who can confirm, at least two, who said they missed the best in show for the Carrack and they would have liked it. And the Carrack, as I pointed out in my hangar video, my video where I showed the hangar, my best in show Carrack skin paint, it came with a shirt and a helmet. So it's a lot of value added there for Carrack owners. So especially new Carrack owners, it would have been cool to see that on these larger ships, especially like a Carrack, it's a really beautiful skin, and it would have been really cool to see a new style in the Orison colors on the Carrack. That would have been pretty dang cool. So we'll see if that comes together. And I think that there's no everyone's got a horse in this race. It's got 17 hours left. So the voting only started 5 hours ago or so. And there's a really cool post on Reddit showing the hourly stats as data points between the vote and the difference in votes between the Carrack and the MPUV Cargo, the Argo MPUV Cargo, or the Argo Cargo for short, that they've been using, and it's pretty dang cool. So I'm going to link that below. It's not mine; it was somebody created it, but it's great to see that information coming out and kind of really capturing it. And you can see below the David versus Goliath comments here. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that, because I'm trying not to push anybody different directions. You make your own decisions. That's what I always try to pitch. So with all that being said, that's basically all I got today. There is no Star Citizen Live for Friday, so if you're looking for my analysis videos, or you're on the Star Citizen YouTube going, where's the repost of it? Basically, it never made it to Twitch. It never made it to Star Citizen's channel. It won't make it here either because it doesn't exist. They needed more filming time for the digital Citizen Con content, unfortunately. So there will not be that video tonight. All right. Thank you all, and fly safe.